Well, we continue to get you all the back-to-back breaking updates coming in as far as the Ukraine border crisis is concerned. The visuals are on your screens right now are in fact the ones that were posted by the Ukrainian Defense Ministry, where it was seen flexing its muscle on social media. The ministry said that the guards of the Ukrainian sky have 77 planes and 90 enemy helicopters. In fact, the Defense Ministry of Ukraine challenged its Russian invaders, saying those who came to us with the sword will die by sword. The world is astonished by the bravery of Ukrainians in this war. Despite heavy Russian offense, Ukrainians are putting up a very tough fight. And the visuals on your screens as well saying just the same of how the Russians, the Ukrainians have been giving a very stiff resistance to the Russian army, even though the Russian army seems to have, in fact, has military supremacy over Ukraine in ways. In many ways, the Ukrainians giving a very, very tough fight to the Russian army, and the military might of the Ukraine army is on display by the Ukraine Defense Ministry, saying that it will continue to put up a very stiff resistance, a tough fight to the Russian army. Ankit, my colleague, is also joining us from the Mumbai newsroom. Ankit, we can see the visuals on our screens right now. What the Ukraine Defense Ministry has posted, saying that the Ukrainians will continue to give a very tough fight to the Russian army.
Absolutely, and what's very interesting, Samiksha, is that the Ukrainian Air Force says that it has 77 fighters and 90 Russian helicopters. And so what it is saying is, we started the war with barely any air force. Russia was the aggressor in the skies. We asked for a no-fly zone. NATO is not agreeing. But now we have taken so many Russian aircraft. We are going to use the Russian aircraft against Russia. That's why they say, when you live by the sword, you die by the sword. So this is a somewhat of a flip and a change in fortunes for Ukraine. Of course, Russia still maintains a very heavy advantage, and it is the clear dominant force in the skies. But Ukraine has been shooting down increasing number of Russian aircraft, especially a lot of Soviet-era aircraft. There are lots of them in the skies. The Sukhoi Su-25s and the 27s, we've seen them shot down. We have seen the helicopter shot down. And now, Samiksha, Ukraine is saying, and it is posting this video of sophisticated flying equipment and aircraft doing their maneuvers, as well as missiles and anti-aircraft defense systems. And it says, and in a warning to Russia, it says that we will use your own technology against you. So that is what is very apparent from this, that the Ukrainian Ministry of Defense and the Ukrainian military and air force is unwilling to compromise in any way, shape or form in the face of Russian aggression. Samiksha.
That's right, Ankit. And another question that is coming to our minds at this point in time is that the only thing that can defeat Putin at this point in time is military defeat. So many are asking, is the West even doing enough when it comes to giving that military aid to Ukraine?
And now we shift our focus to the city of Kharkiv, the second largest city in Ukraine. And remember how the city and the residents here have been bearing the brunt of Russian aggression since day one. Since day one of the war, we've seen non-stop bombardment, shelling, missile attacks that have been coming in from the Russian side. So Kharkiv pretty much has been a city that has seen a lot of devastation and destruction, complete destruction. We've seen buildings, civilian infrastructures, residential apartments collapse. They've been reduced to nothing. And Ankit also continues to be with us here. Ankit, Kharkiv region has been bearing the brunt of Russian offensive since the very first day. But we've also seen a stiff resistance by the Ukrainian forces. We've seen several civilians take up arms. They vowed to defend their motherland. So story of courage also. Multiple of such stories continue to come in. But for the moment, the focus remains on the kind of retaliation also that is being put out by the Ukrainian side.
Absolutely, Kritsween. It's all happening in Kharkiv, and it's happened there since day one. It is a city that is barely 50 or 100 kilometers away from the Russian border, where the Russians were encamped en masse in force with over 100,000 troops and mechanized infantry systems. Until now, almost 3 weeks since the war began, the Kharkiv Ukrainians are holding very firm. It looked initially like many of them would be driven out, but they have come and hit back hard. And that is why you have a situation where Russia makes some gains gains, then they are beaten back, and then you have the shelling and the attack on what are presumed to be residential areas and buildings and installations that are more focused towards civilians. But at this moment, Russia will go and claim that the Americans and NATO have equipped the Ukrainians with so many weapons that it is impossible to tell between civilians and the military. And that is why you have situations where we've seen so many visuals, Kritzween, of where Russian tanks are firing directly at multi-story Ukrainian buildings. And so that is essentially what we are seeing more and more as the war progresses, as
Yes,
Russia is
absolutely.
unable to conquer any of the cities.
And Ankit, you know, much that is being spoken of how is it that the West, how is it that NATO and European Union have also been swinging into action and have been slapping tight sanctions against Russia. And another update that we're in fact picking up on the same, the European Union is finalizing the fourth package of sanctions against Russia, including in the personal and sectoral domains. So once again, more breaking news coming in as far as EU sanctions are concerned. Remember, they had already decided to cut off Russia from the IMF and the World Bank. They've been imposing bans on steel imports from Russia, luxury goods exports to Moscow. Several of such developments have already taken place in the recent past itself. And now we've seen US also come in and tighten sanctions. They've been imposing more and more sanctions. Not just that, they've in fact sent out a warning. Ankit, they've sent out a warning to China, and we're parallelly keeping our focus on the meeting that is currently underway in Rome as well, because a lot is going to be discussed on how China could come in and help Russia, or rather ease the burden that is currently being faced by the Russian side as far as these non-stop sanctions go.
Absolutely. All eyes are on that meeting, Kritzween. Charges have been traded between the two countries. Viewers, we also have more breaking news coming in. We have visuals coming in right now, viewers, of the moment that a shell hit a residential building in Kyiv. We have these visuals coming in more and more from civilian areas. And in one of the visuals that we have now received, you can see how there appears to be a park. And there is a person who is walking in the park. And as he is walking towards towards his right direction, you see from around there a large explosion takes place, and there is a building there that is engulfed in smoke and flames. This is the continued shelling of the Kyiv residential areas and Ukrainian residential areas. For more on this, I'm going to hand over to Samiksha. Samiksha, definitely Russia's claim that it is avoiding the civilian areas don't hold mustard in light of these visuals, do they?
They're speaking for themselves, how residential buildings have been, attacked time and again by the Russian troops, even though Russia constantly has maintained that residential areas are not on its target and only military bases is on its target. Whereas what we're seeing on the screens right now paints a completely different picture, saying the visuals there speaking for themselves, how Russians have been time and again attacking these residential complexes, the residential buildings that have now been reduced to rubble, reduced to dust as a result of the airstrikes and bombardments that continue to take place. And this particular visual coming in from the Kyiv region, where the airstrikes happened by the Russian troops. You can see how, in fact, the visuals are from that very moment when the shelling happened in this very location of Kyiv. And this is the residential building again that we are talking about. And the whole area completely devastated. We can see the extent, the magnitude of devastation as well on the screens right now. This as the crucial talks are still underway between Russia and Ukraine.
Absolutely. The